Welcome to this Encounters Live event from 1 Mill Street in Leamington Spa. Lovely audience, nice to see you all. And welcome, Adela.
Thank you. We're just about.
Yeah.
The lights are very bright.
Okay, so wow, that's interesting to us, isn't it? All these things are interesting. Oh, by the way, we've got a friend here as well, which we'll
if you haven't
introduce.
noticed.
Our fluffy friend. He's very important. Yeah, it's a lovely place. Lots of interesting stuff. I'm particularly taken with the fact we're sitting under this lovely, not quite real tree. I mean, it's real, but it's not natural. It's beautiful, twinkly lights and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to use a word, technobiophilia.
There you
go. We're full of all these kinds of words, these kinds of rich descriptions of situations and the design features that are in them. Yeah, it's one of the things we're going to try and capture in this discussion is what we do ordinarily, this kind of life where we are looking at things in a designerly way. And we use this term designerly dialogue. So we're going to do some designerly dialogue. And our fluffy friend here, if you're just listening to this as a podcast, there is on the table a cuddly toy. Very important cuddly toy.
We'll come to him in a minute.
We'll come to him later, yes. But yeah, when I say technobiophilia, it's beautiful, natural-ish kind of environment with that technological edge. So, hi, Adela.
Hello.
How are we going to introduce ourselves?
Well, hello. I'm Adela Glyn-Davies. I'm the Director of Design Studies at the University of Warwick, but I'm predominantly a designer. And we will talk a little bit about what it means to be a designer. Something that Rob and I share is that we wouldn't necessarily call ourselves academics, but pracademics. So we're practitioners who happen to be in academia and happen to have a very different experience of academia as to what we heard in the first presentation. And in reference to that, welcome to the Reformation. Yeah. Design is quite a particular area of study. In fact, it is very pluralistic. And I wanted to kick us off just by challenging everybody to think about what you actually think design is. Because a lot of the time when students approach us or parents approach us or when people in industry approach me, they think of design as a very, very particular set of things around us, such as the furniture that we're sitting on, the tech that is recording all of this, perhaps the lovely clothes that we're wearing.
Decoration.
All of these things consider to be design, but they are what we call artifact level design. And as such, that is a part of design that we're really careful about. We heard it earlier in the lovely exchange around artifact carrying lots of meaning and care. That's a very, very important part of design. But when each one of these artifacts is released into the real world, it gets layered in complexity. And as such, an artifact becomes a product, which is part of a service, which is part of a structure, which is part of a governance, a policy strategy, and ultimately is part of systems. And all of that is design. The artifact all the way to the system. So when Rob and I talk about design, we talk about everything around us, the way we think, the way we talk, but also the things that we use and how we use them, how we experience them. Shout out to the Scat VC crew at the back. You're part of the of the gig.
Yeah.
So Rob, with this in mind, why is there a platypus on the table?
Platypus is here because I love him and students love him. Okay. I mean, this may seem a little bizarre, but even my postgrad students, PhD students, often who are relatively old, we have the platypus in the class quite often. And, you know, there's a kind of visceral and emotional element to this thing. It's a kind of beautifully constructed, cuddly toy. And I've had students who, for example, we're doing challenging stuff. I'll get to the kind of deep meaning in a minute, but we're doing quite challenging stuff. And, you know, there was one guy who was really quite anxious and he was putting the platypus on his head like this during the class. And I thought, yeah, that's okay, whatever. You know, we want to be really inclusive and get people to feel relaxed and open and engaged and creative and all those things. So the visceral feel of the thing, I'll pass him around the room later on. You can all have a little cuddle with the guy. The visceral feel. Visceral is a term we use in design studies. So the visceral kind of touch, feel, that kind of, that warmth, that comforting, that's actually really important. And then also the kind of emotional part of it. Now, it's a little bit challenging, it can be, to some students. We've only had a couple of students over time who've kind of responded to this by saying, no, I want to be an academic. I don't want cuddly toys in my class. And actually, most of them have been quite open to it and have embraced it. And it's become kind of like very symbolic and very much part of what we're doing, even as part of the kind of research culture. Okay, but there is a deeper meaning. Okay.
Go on, tell us.
So who are we?
Tell us.
What do we do? Well, I think did I mention I'm kind of vaguely a high status academic at the University of Warwick, do kind of design research and practical stuff. I've studied, actually I'm a philosopher really, but I've studied artificial intelligence and worked in artificial intelligence software development. So I've worked in kind of like deep design professions, education as well. I've got a kind of element of cognitive science and all that kind of stuff. Fascinated in all of this and lots of interests and talents. Design research, design anthropology, all these different things. There's a lot more than that goes to make up being able to understand design, the complexity of design that Adela's talked about, the complexity of the world around us, the designed and emergent elements of that and how we experience those things and how they change. That's really hard, and you need all of these different disciplines which we bring together. Some more than others. So cognitive science, psychology has been really important, anthropology really important, technology studies, engineering, all those different things. You need all of that to try to understand the world. And also then an element of, okay, so we know all that stuff, but let's kind of put that aside and be a bit more playful with it to try and come up with ways in which we can change the world for the better, which is what we do. So we are, I think, really deeply motivated about changing the world for the better. But to some people, naming no names in academia, that kind of weird combination of different things is kind of, that doesn't make sense. They can't believe it. It doesn't kind of fit into their expectations and their culture. Now, this goes back not to Humboldt, but to one of Humboldt's contemporaries, Immanuel Kant, who designed a structure for the university where all these different faculties are divided and specialized and kept apart and put in their place. We don't do that. We're allowed pretty much free range to go crazy. Now, how does that relate to the platypus? Okay, so the platypus, if you have a look at that, it's got a duck bill, it's got a waggly beaver tail, it's got webbed feet. It's a mammal that lays eggs. Okay, how weird a combination is that? The male also has some poisonous, venomous barbs on its legs, which is a weird thing. So it's a really strange combination. And when that was first discovered in the 19th century by Western scientists, they actually thought it was a fake. They couldn't believe that that combination worked. But in reality, and I've seen them in Australia, they are beautifully adapted to their environment, just like us, design studies. Okay, that's the punchline. And actually, for the very first time, I actually had a student, a really smart PhD student from history, who kind of got the punchline before I told it, which is kind of, did spoil it a bit. So that's where, that's what we're up to. And we're given a lot of free rein and even pretty significant amounts of money to do this at the University of Warwick. As part of the arts faculty, part of cross-faculty studies, and establishing this new design studies.
That's right.
So do you want to say a bit more about that?
Well, what makes Warwick quite a special place? I've worked at the universities, but I've predominantly been in industry. What brought me to Warwick is that it saw design. It kind of understood the platypus thing and went, well, we'd like to do this, but where do we put it? And traditionally, design has been either part of an art school or an engineering school, and then we just fought over it. Where does it belong? It's engineering, it's in arts. And Warwick's done the genius move. In fact, Rob had something to do with this. It's put it in the School for Cross-Faculty Studies, the hub that connects the arts with the engineering, the medical sciences with the social sciences. and everything else pretty much. And this is where we're at. We're a hub for design, and design as such we define as a perpetual state of change. And this is what we're all about. It is about change and recognizing how do we deal with all this complexity around us, the difficulties, and use them in a playful, accessible way, in a way that includes all voices, not just thinking of the designers as the leaders of change. Rather, we're thinking about modes in which way we can include people to be part of the change. And this is what we're about. Rob, and I have a question for you relating to change.
Okay.
Tell me your take on design for change.
Wow. Okay. So just reiterating that point you made there about one of the things we're about is designing with people. So we have this concept of design capability. So that's the ability for people to understand the world around them in a multi-sensory way and at different levels. So that kind of deep systems level, as well as the kind of fine detail. So helping people to do that and helping them to analyze it, critically evaluate, make judgments saying, I don't like this, I think it's wrong, and then creatively respond by changing it and getting that design capability out to communities and developing it with people. So that's a really important aspect. Now, this isn't just us. This is actually happening worldwide. There are other people doing this. We had, a couple of years ago, a professor from Cape Town University, Kanilwe Munye, came and talked to us about how she's doing that with communities across Africa, which obviously is, really impactful. I wish we got to do more of that. I need to get out there and,
It is what we will be doing with our colleagues from the Warwick Institute of Engagement, as a matter of fact.
But I'm from Coventry, so I know, actually Coventry needs that as well. And we do some work in the region.
Yes.
So it's not just, the developing world. It's actually everywhere needs this because we are all struggling with this very rapid change that's been forced upon us. AI, for example, virtual reality. Can I tell my story about?
Here we go. I knew this was going to happen.
My most proud thing, and if she's listening to this, she's going to be embarrassed. I'll do this really quickly. Okay, so actually I'm going to tell you this because it's, for an educator, it's often the really long cycle impact that you're most proud of. And I'm talking about something that's taken maybe 15 years to work through. I'm talking about something, but it's a good example of how we will long-term influence and impact, and we want to escalate and scale the amount of this that's happening. So many years ago, I had a bunch of students who are working with me in this designerly way across the university, trying to help academics and other students to make the most of changing technology, to understand it, to see what the possibilities were, and to actually do creatively good stuff with it. One of those students, Catherine Allen, went on to win a BAFTA with an iPad design company. Amazing stuff, but then started to discover actually what was possible with new virtual reality technology. We got together again after a few years and started to do some investigations at the university, some design experiments with the best VR kit we could scrape together. It was quite hard work at the time, and just using these approaches to just to try and get a sense of how people responded to it, what the possibilities were, how it might be transformative. Okay, and now, lots and lots of iterations of that. Catherine went off, founded a very successful VR experience and consultancy company called Limina. Amazing work, but also has gone on not only to do that with her company, but also to try with an alliance of other, especially women working virtual reality, to shape this new developing industry for ethical reasons, for good reasons, to try to make it more kind of a safer space for young people and women working with the NSPCC, etc. And then coming back to us and feeding that back into our research and our development. So that kind of long loop and impact, that's what we're after. And with Adela, we're going to be able to do a lot more of that. So a lot more people will feel the power of the platypus.
Absolutely. I think, examples like these are really important, because what we're trying to convey is that design is very broad, is pluralist. You know, back in the 50s and 60s, where a bunch of architects and engineers thought, hey, this stuff is really good, we need to kind of scientize it and put it in a formula. Tried for ages just to figure out this stuff doesn't really fit into anything, but it's really useful. And for a very long time, we've been trying to categorize design, and in design education, traditionally, we have been doing that. Not very much for a long time, for a very good reason. Mm-hmm. We're now at a point where we can no longer design for the purpose of the want. We have been designing for the want for a very long time, and caused a lot of the issues that we have today. In fact, it is poor design that has caused the major, colossal, complex issues that we're faced with today. So it is time for a new design to come out, and new designers to come out, to be part of a change towards sustainable futures, what we talked about earlier. So change is the essence. It's kind of oxymorically the constants that we're dealing with. But how do we do this? Yeah. How do we tell people about how this actually happens in university? Because universities have a rep. Now, I come from art school and from engineering school, and they're just wild, sometimes lawless places. I don't know what sociology is like, but it sounds completely foreign to me. But how does it happen with us? Yeah,
so creating the right, I mean, another thing I do, actually, I'm a director of student experience for the arts faculty. So creating the right kind of environment, atmosphere, community from the bottom up. And also, one of the reasons we're here tonight, actually bringing more people into the university, more diverse people, and making it a place where lots of people can connect with what we're doing. And you guys can contribute your wisdom, experience, knowledge, which is, where that's so valuable, and connecting with the young people who've got another perspective and bringing all these things together. So yeah, that's really the starting point. And that's kind of like, you can think of it as creating the platform for a better future, which is where we're at today. I don't think we can immediately solve all the problems. They're massive, but we can start, creating the platform through which we can get together in the right way and solve those problems and make a better future together.
Going back to what I was talking about earlier around a bunch of architects and engineers coming together in the 50s and 60s trying to scientize design. They did it because they realized that designers are in fact scientists of complexity. That was the other known term for designers. It is because they're dealing with heck of a lot of data, heck of a lot of random terminology, and managing to put it together into something cohesive, interesting, accessible, playful, and convey it for action. Now, when we're talking about building educational environments, and Rob can chip in on this, we understand that the systems of existing parameters are set in place. Now, for change to happen, there's something very vital that needs to be built. We say systems change happens at the speed of trust. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our work is actually in building trust between students and academics with other academics. You wouldn't believe all sorts of nonsense that happens there. But trust is very important, and it is the material that good systems are built with, and change is actually made from.
Yeah, trust is so. I've seen many cases where that trust isn't there and the results aren't great, some of which I can show you at the university. But that's changing people's attitudes. So we have to get in there early. And it's just, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. We are changing attitudes and behaviors in the university bit by bit, chipping away, getting, for example, students involved much earlier in designing. Not making sure it kind of runs off in a direction that...
It doesn't even get approved unless students have had a go at it.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah. So, we're big believers in kind of inclusive design practice, which is essentially designing for as many people as possible. In the process of it, you will inevitably exclude somebody, but because design is never finished, it's never ending, you will always iteratively work towards that inclusion. So when we talk about how do we include students in our work, well, we'll start with the premise that who we're designing for, who's this for? It's not for me, and it's not for Rob, and it's not for you. well, maybe, I don't know, you look very young. But it's for the students, you know, and you need to be part of the process. When we're in industry and we're designing a product, I'm not dreaming something up because I've really fancied to make this. We've been doing that for a very long time. And now we've got, I mean, Mike, I'm not going to go there, but we've got serious issues with materiality in the world. So who you're designing for must be part of the actual project.
Including the unborn. So I had some architects.
Yes.
I was interviewing some architects who'd done some design work at the university. They said something really astounding to me, which was that actually this building, the designs they put in place, will still be in use and being adapted in different ways when we're all dead. That's the way in which they were designing. They were designing for future generations as well, which is hard. So it takes imagination. But that's, you know, we are about imagination as well. So we're not just about understanding how things are, but in imagining ways in which they might be different.
But also knowing the past, knowing the present, speculating in the future. You know, you were saying the thing that distinguishes new designers from how we used to design things is that we're very much operating within the premises of what we call social design. WIE very much works with us on this, and it's by definition design with and for people, and that really starts at the core of what we do as teachers.
And for animals, and for the environment,
yes.
and the world. So
yes.
Yeah, we have to,
I think we're getting little signs.
Thank you.